This episode brought to you by
GTM AI Academy. Learn AI from a globally trusted resource. Coach K, Jonathan Carfort. Their bundle, Enablement AI Mastery, includes both the core Generative AI Foundations course and Enablement AI Mastery specifically. Each course has a value of $599 individually, but Coach K is offering them as a bundle with reduced pricing. And as a listener of the Inside Sales Enablement podcast, if you act now, you can use code ISE30 to get an additional 30% off of the entire thing. You will also receive free access to the GTM AI Tools demo library. Coach K has done the demos, so you don't have to, and offers his straight shooting opinion, fact-based through an enablement lens. Go to www.gtmaiacademy.com and enter code ISE30 today and elevate your AI enablement game.
Welcome to the Inside Sales Enablement podcast. Where has the profession been? Where is it now? And where is it heading? What does it mean to you, your company, other functions, the market? Find out here. Join the founding father of the sales enablement profession, Scott Santucci, and Trailblazer Brian Lambert as they take you behind the scenes of the birth of an industry. The Inside Sales Enablement podcast starts now.
Hi, this is Scott Santucci.
And I'm Brian Lambert, and we are the Sales Enablement Insiders. Our podcast is dedicated to helping leaders understand the big questions they should consider to be successful in sales enablement. On this podcast, we like to reframe, revisit, rethink, and tackle reality in the sales enablement role. Scott, why don't you frame it out for us today?
Sure thing, Brian, and thank you very much for everybody listening. That's a great introduction, Brian. One of the things that we're going to be talking about here today is the fuzzy world, the gray area of sales coaching and the difference between frontline sales managers and sales enablement. And to give that some color, the way that we're going to frame it out is I'm going to tell a little bit of a story about the Hubble Space Telescope. And if you are a science nerd like myself, you're appreciating the wonderful images that we have. Shoot, they even took a photo a couple months ago of actual real-life black hole. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But the story that of starting out wasn't so great. When the Hubble Space Telescope was first released and brought out of the space shuttle, it had a problem. It actually couldn't focus on anything really. And the problem that it had is, like most complex machinery, there were different teams. One team was focused on doing calculations using the metric system. Another team was focused on using the standard system. And you can think, what a bunch of idiots. But I think no one in their right mind would call somebody who works at NASA, literally a rocket scientist, stupid. The issue is when things get complicated, it's very, 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 very easy for people to lose sight of clarity, particularly lack of communications and the like. So that's what we're talking about. And Brian, your thoughts?
Well, I would say we don't have the standard coaching system and the metric coaching system, or maybe we do. But when you look at that, Scott, what's your point as it relates to sales coaching?
My point on that is very simple. Sales people are smart. Sales managers are smart. Sales enablement people are smart. And VPs of sales are smart. Let's assume everybody in their roles are smart. It is very easy for us to sit there and call and think other people are not able to do one thing or the other, but maybe we have a bigger problem, which is a lack of clarity. And that's really the keystone of this. So what we're going to do in this conversation is, like most sales enablement professionals, every single one of us has our own lens, our own perspective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint that a little bit, and we're going to role play this out and say, for the sales enablement people who are saying, I've read a lot about frontline sales coaching, It's a great force multiplier for us to do. I'm going to provide coaching services, coaching for our reps. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because, well, I have to demonstrate value, right? I mean, let's cut to the chase. We have a fuzzy role. Most of the organization doesn't, most of the rest of the organization doesn't really understand what we do, but I have so much, I've communicated so much expertise and talent around sales training and sales coaching that I'm going to get in that game because I'm not seeing frontline sales managers do it. So
don't know. I would say don't do that.
What? How can I not do that? Brian, I've got all this talent. I've done all this training. Look at the feedback scores I get when I actually do courses. My feedback scores are through the roof. Why are you telling me not to do it?
So I didn't know you were going to go there. So this is totally, unscripted, but I would say I'm having a visceral reaction to you taking on the frontline manager role. So in other words, to be more clear, if you're in a sales enablement function and you want to provide coaching services, you should be providing that to frontline managers and helping them coach, not doing their job for them. Because in today's world, in my opinion, the role of a frontline manager is to drive productivity of their team. And that's their job to coach their people, not yours.
Wait, what are you talking about, Brian? That sounds semantics. Coaching the frontline sales managers versus their people. At the end of the day, the salespeople aren't able, without reinforcement of the training that we've provided them, let's say we're rolling out Challenger, our company's made a huge investment in that. If we don't have reinforcement in it, it's gonna die on the vine. I know it, you know it. No one's really concentrating on reinforcement, so I need to do it.
So I'm laughing because you must have been on the receiving end of a lot of this type of discussion, because for people that know Scott, there's no way he would just say what you just said. So I'm glad you clarified this as role playing. So
yep, I'm a listener.
You're a listener. So but I would say, okay. In that view, then, what's the purpose of the manager specifically, right? So I framed out the admin side, and the role of a manager is just like any other frontline manager, approving vacations, admin time, expenses, et cetera. On the productivity side, though, that's the challenge. Because they're sales managers, they're responsible for pipeline, forecast, closing deals, et cetera. And so when you look at the role of the first line manager, there's not a lot of clarity there. And I think there's a lot of assumptions is what I would say.
Well, wait a second, Brian. I don't need to read their job descriptions. I know that their number one job is to help drive performance of their reps. And they're not providing performance coaching to their reps. I sit on all those, the QBRs. I hear it. They miss the qualifying opportunities left and right. They need help. I need to provide it for them.
Well, have you asked them what help they need? To me, unleash.
I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't need to ask to help when I see a QBR and I hear the conversations happening and I see the holes in the pipeline. I got to act. We got to act. We don't have time.
Yeah, I would agree that you have to act, but one of the things that I would ask you to act on is understanding the role specifically, and more importantly, driving that clarity across the organization, because you're making a lot of assumptions by acting to fill a gap that you may not need to. Two, somebody else may be doing.
I was a frontline sales manager before.
Well, that was before, not today, where customers have evolved. So solutions are a lot more sophisticated, and quite frankly, the demands on a sales manager's time are exponentially higher than when you did it before. And also, I believe that the role has morphed from an individual manager driving individual deals to creating team outcomes with an entire team of people. And to think that you can waltz right in there and start telling people how to close more deals, not only are you going to perhaps undermine the authority of the frontline manager, right? You're also perhaps going to set back sales numbers because you're not involved in it every day. It's a little naive to think you can walk into a sales process today and drive better results than somebody who's involved with 5 to 8 people on a daily basis. I mean, what are you talking about? Why would you even want to do that? Doesn't make sense.
Wait a second. I'm the one who trained them all on our new sales methodology. So I know everything there is to know about Challenger. Everything there is. Our reps aren't following the methodology. And I am in a unique position because I trained everybody on this. I'm in a unique position. What do you mean I don't know? I know because I know Challenger.
Yeah, and you can line up behind the 47 other people that know their widget that want the sales manager to help roll it out, from marketing, from product, from the CRM team, from the analytics team, from HR, from talent acquisition, from product number 37, from the finance people to the operations people that want to talk about quarterly reforecasts, et cetera. And to think that, you can come in as a sales training bias and say, I taught your people, I know better than you do on how to manage perhaps a sales cycle, how to handle a sales call, how to prioritize time and coach people how to prioritize time, how to renegotiate the trade-offs on a daily basis on these demands is not right to me. And I would say redirecting that energy to go do something into the broader team view or the system view is way more valuable. For example, sales managers have the hardest job of anybody in the business world today because of the pressures that they're under. Who's helping simplify what's coming at them? And with regard to coaching and talent in general, for example, I think you could spend a lot more time understanding what type of talent sales managers need to get from the recruiting team, for example. There's a lot of frustration there. If you want to teach somebody Challenger, go teach the talent acquisition folks what salespeople are trying to do. I think that would be a great use of your skills as a trainer. But to take over the sales manager's job and coach their people on behalf of them is to me insulting. I wouldn't appreciate it if it was my team. Okay,
so we're going to end role play. So, Brian, how'd I do?
Well, I'm pissed off right now. Yeah. So that was great. I think also.
Well, why are you pissed? Why are you pissed off?
Well, it's one as well. I have a visceral reaction because it's real, right? I had a sales manager call me, I think a week and a half ago, going, "Uh-oh, I just unleashed, a whole tirade on my talent acquisition team," and I told him they were screwing up. He didn't use that word because it was expletive-laden. My whole sales team, because they need to get their stuff together.
Right.
And it's frustrating to be a sales manager today. And and if you look at it, the reason why I'm having an emotive reaction to this kind of you as a manager should go do X, Y, or Z. I one, was never asked by you what would be helpful. Two, when I started actually sharing what I believe should happen, you kept arguing with me. And that I think is frustrating for sales managers to be in that position.
And that was pretty heightened. And the purpose of that is we hear a lot of these kinds of feedback. And the purpose of this show or this particular episode is to understand the situation more holistically. So taking a step back, let's break down this problem. The frontline. What actually is the role and responsibility of a frontline sales manager? And if you were to look at this like a Venn diagram, you have two Venn diagrams coming together. You have one, they are a cog, for lack of a better word, in the sales machine. So when you think about the sales leader working with human resources and finance, they have to put together a structure of their department. And in that structure of their department, there's a term called span of control. And they set a metric of how many reps report to whom. And it's a very mechanical viewpoint. And lost in that shuffle, the job description of a frontline sales manager gets overlooked. So it is not uncommon for many variations of a frontline job description to exist inside a company, and somehow that gets baked in to somebody's job performance. Now, So that's one side of it. The second side of it is I have yet to meet, and I'm going to ask you, Brian, a frontline sales manager that doesn't feel a heck of a lot of responsibility. Heck, they're paid. Most of their salary is variable, and it's based on their team's performance. I have yet to meet a frontline sales manager that isn't interested in helping their salespeople be better.
Yeah, that's right.
Have you ever met a frontline sales manager that isn't interested in that?
That they wouldn't be in the job.
Not for long.
Right. Right.
So the question that then is, you have two competing forces. You have one force which says this job description, what we're asking of you as a frontline sales manager, is unclear. And then secondly, you've learned how to, you're probably, if you're a frontline sales manager, you're at least a year or two away removed from the field, maybe even longer. So you probably don't know everything that's going on in terms of techniques. The techniques that got you here to where you were may be different than the techniques that work today. And you probably aren't as empathetic as you could be about the change that last year, 2 years ago, you were asking your sellers to sell a whole bunch of volume to minion level buyers. Now you're rolling out Challenger or whatever sales methodology, and now you want your sellers to go sell commercial insights, for God's sakes, to business executives.
Yeah, and 12 and
how do you balance the two?
And 8.4 to 13.1 buyers.
Right.
Yeah.
So it something has to give, and if we in sales enablement want to partner and leverage and be a part of the frontline sales manager group, we have to realize that they're under so much pressure. They don't have a lot of vocabulary. I like what you said before with that. They don't have a lot of vocabulary to describe these things. And these are some challenges. So let's get into some prescriptions now for what can a sales enablement leader do to navigate. So Brian, do you and I, what is our position on coaching as a thing, a business within a business, a service that sales enablement provides? What's our position on that?
Well, one, I would say do not provide that service to reps. If you're going to provide coaching services, provide it to managers, and start with, to your point, having clarity on the first line manager role, and ensuring, and if you do the interviews, do the needs analysis, whatever your name is for it, that there's clarity across not only the sales management team, but the HR team as well. That would be the first thing.
Yeah, so let me piggyback on that. So I'm speaking to you directly as a listener. If you believe that your greatest contribution to your company is to provide coaching directly to reps, you are not a sales enablement professional. You are a sales coach. Call yourself a sales coach and be a sales coach, and recognize that's what you are. For the rest of us doing sales enablement, we're doing broader things than that.
Well, isn't coaching underneath the enablement umbrella, Scott? I'm going to flip it back on you.
Well, sure. That's what I'm saying. If that's how you're defining what you're adding the most value in, then you're not a force multiplier.
Yeah,
the force multiplier would say, okay, I'm so confident in my ability to coach individual reps, I'm going to teach frontline sales managers how to coach their reps. So the service that I can get the best multiple out of my time is if I can get, let's say we have 100 reps. Out of my time, I could coach maybe 10, 20 reps, let's say, or I can coach 20 sales managers who can coach their 8 reps. Where am I going to have a greater return on my investment? I can build a similar kind of curriculum that I know how to do. And I can create a common language that currently doesn't exist. Just like we say with sales, the benefit of a great sales methodology is that we have a common language amongst our sales force. We don't have a common language across our sales managers. And without that common language, it's going to be very difficult for me to get feedback on other programs that I could do.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think less than 5% of organizations, I can't remember who put that research out, but they said that less than 5% have an actual standardized, if you will, sales methodology. And even to me,
sales coaching methodology.
Sales coaching methodology.
Sales coaching method, right.
Yeah. And I would even say if you take sales coaching to some sort of one page picture, that would be helpful. What is sales coaching? Because it's a conversation, or is it a philosophy? Is it a task? Is it a process? Is it a methodology? What is it? And I think there's just a lack of clarity, not only on the manager role, which we've both talked about, but the second point I would make to be successful in enablement here is what is sales coaching, and how would you define it so that it can scale? And if you're not able to define it, so to speak, if you're not able to give it an identity, delineate it from a methodology versus a philosophy, because the first pushback you're going to hear is from sales management. Oh, I'm constantly coaching. It's my philosophy, So how would you handle that? And I think there's some work to be done there that can drive a lot of leverage. So that'd be my second point, Scott, is to define what you mean by sales coaching. What's your reaction to that?
I think that's right. I think we have two similar problems. Sales 101, right? So this is what makes this whole sales enablement thing hard, especially for those of you who have sales background. It's really hard to sell sales internally to salespeople. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that's what we're talking about. And sales 101 is, just because you see a problem doesn't necessarily mean your client's supposed to see a problem, right? I think solution selling calls it the latent pain to pain. I forget what other groups call it. But one thing that I think is really important is you're going to need some sponsorship from your VP of sales. If you're going to start doing things to quote unquote offer coaching services, you're going to need to have their support. The first way to do their support would be, how do we illuminate what the problem is in the first place? One thing to do that won't capture a lot of visibility is do some analysis on the variation to job descriptions, and then prioritize, say, hey, look, here's the job description, do some interviews of sales managers about what they're actually doing, and then say, hey, look, these are the job descriptions, here's what they're actually doing, and then say, Mr. VP of sales, of these 5 things, what would you state in order of priority? I guarantee you the VP of sales is going to say, well, coaching our reps is going to be high. It's going to be, definitely in the top 2 or 3. The care and feeding of the spreadsheet management is not going to be high. But we're going to find out the amount of time that our frontline sales manager is spending doing all the spreadsheet maintenance and administrative stuff is going to be astronomical. So we first have to create the space. Even if we do create a great program, we have to create the time space to allow a program to actually thrive.
Yeah.
Giving that insight will give you permission from the VP of sales to say, go explore it. And now the VP of sales has your back. And you can probably guarantee that you're going to get a lot of resistance from most of the frontline sales managers. So you're going to have to find your next group of people to target.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up 3 things in that. One is the variability across job descriptions. Definitely agree with that. The second is, good old fashioned time and motion study for anybody who's got that kind of background, but like what are managers actually spending time on? And then third is the prioritization piece, right? So that's just 3 variables that are kind of hidden and not really well understood or discussed. So I totally agree with those. That's a great point.
So now what we've done with these 3 points, now we've created demand for our products and services. So instead of pushing a product and service and acting in desperation, hopefully we've got other things that we're working on. Now, how would we design a coaching program? Like what it would look like? How would I communicate this, Brian, as a business within a business? What service am I providing to whom, and how would I measure my results?
Yeah. So the audience here, the customer would be sales managers. So first line, the service you're going to provide would be some sort of, it'd be I'd look at it from 2 lenses, the mindset, philosophical side of it. Like, what's the purpose and the why behind sales coaching. And then 2 would be some sort of method. And I would keep it simple, so it doesn't become yet another administrative compliance issue. Because really, to me, you have to teach, and you want to teach sales managers how to drive team outcomes through, real-time, constant communication that helps close, the gap with their customers. So, and oh, by the way, that just happens to be called coaching. So if you go at it from, let's teach them yet another model and another spreadsheet to go comply to, you're not going to get as much leverage as, let's talk about the team dynamic and what your team really needs from you. And for example, they might need, more of you've got their back. And as you have their back more, they're going to bring things to you that they're having challenges with. If you are in your office all day long and they bring you issues and you rip their head off, they're not going to come and tell you their challenges. So I could teach you a coaching model all day long. You're never going to be able to use it because you haven't built an environment where people want to get coached, right? So there's a lot to figure out there. But I agree that your services could be in that vein to create some sort of program to create the environment where coaching interactions, because that's what we're talking about, the interaction between managers and reps across 5 to 8 people, their span of control, to create the right type of team environment or subculture that closes the gap to customer. And I call that coaching.
So let's break this down as a business within a business, right? So you and I both love this concept. I want to be in the coaching business. I have this expertise. People on my team have this expertise. I'm interested in differentiating my sales enablement department along. So I'm going to do what my company does. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do a market assessment. You do an impact assessment. What might the impact of better, more consistent, more standard coaching look like inside our organization? Do an analysis, the variable study, the time motion study, and prioritization gap. It sounds like a lot of work. You do need to do the work, but it doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes some discipline. Have a readout, shop that readout, role play out that readout with a few sales managers beforehand to get the right language, and communicate it to the head of sales. The head of sales is going to want everything at first because you're going to expose it and say, here's my game plan of how we're going to roll it out. So point number 1 is do a market study, present it, and get buy-in from, your funder, your board of directors.
Yeah.
Right? Your investor. Point number 2. Now you build your service. To Brian's point, I'd like you to really embrace this idea. Minimum viable product. Brian gave fantastic advice. If anything, just lay out a standard framework to start off with. You're going to feel like that's not good enough, that you need to have a whole heck of a lot more because they're going to be judging you on your quality of your deliverables or whatever. But really, the thing that you're judging on is just, are you moving the needle? And recognize that out of let's say you have a population of 10 managers, most of them are going to ignore it anyway, just like salespeople are going to ignore it. So you want to focus on, you roll something simple out to everybody. But to Brian's point, you want to listen to the 20%, those 2. They're like, hey, Scott, what you're talking about, that sounds great. Now you're in a position where you're working with your power users, just like Business 101. You find your power customers and you build other services on top of that. So so for example, one thing that you can do is you can have a sales wrap forum. In all intents and purposes, you're providing coaching to them, but you're not providing coaching that's competitive with the frontline sales manager. You're saying, frontline sales manager, you're probably not going to have a lot of opportunities for your individual salespeople to practice different kinds of scenarios. Is that right? Yes, that's right, Scott. I can create an environment where people can opt in. We'll pick a topic, let's say it's prospecting, and we'll let the reps talk to each other about how they're getting the best out of coaching. And then I will write up what the findings are, offer some tips, and send it out to everybody. Make that an opt-in thing, not something that's required. So now you're in support of frontline sales managers. We're just trying to give you an overall view of what all this stuff could look like.
Yeah, and what you're saying there, Scott, is you build the services, and this is hidden, and I want to call it out here, put it on the front burner here. You're doing it with sales managers and their teams, not to them. And I think you and I are both wired that way to do it with them. But a lot of it is coming at sales managers is, here's your kit, here's your course, go do it. And that's not going to land. So if you're going to build something, and I know you have the old, build or buy, right? You can bring somebody in, but how's that going to land?
Yes. And, my advice on build or buy is it's always better to do something yourself first before you shop it out. Get enough detail so that you know what it is that you're looking for, because there's a lot of people out there that have very strong opinions about what coaching is or isn't, Brian and I included. You should know the environment. The one thing you should know for sure is, how will I measure success? And if you don't have a way to measure success, you probably shouldn't move forward. So anybody in the coaching space, ask them about how they would measure success. If at the end of the day, they're measuring individual reps' performance, I strongly recommend you either, if you like their approach, refer that on to some sales managers. But you probably don't want to be in the business of directly coaching individual reps, because you are in competition with the business within a business that's frontline sales management. Brian, wrap us up here. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah. We've talked about the clarity challenge. We talked about this idea of how would we provide coaching services. I think, there's some other variables to consider that are critical in the build with that you'll uncover. That's why I like the minimum viable product, but also being in tune with the culture, being in tune with what HR is thinking around this idea of coaching, things like that. Being more curious is critical. And when you look at it, make sure you're not coaching in competition with sales managers, but creating an environment that helps them be successful in their relationships with their reps. From a measurement perspective, I've found over and over again when it comes to sales coaching, if sales managers say this thing is awesome, then that's really the only measurement that sales VPs actually need today with regard to sales coaching, because it's been so fuzzy and so hard to get your head around. It's really been a qualitative measure on, hey, the managers seem to like this thing. As long as it helps them, we're good. And that's kind of the state of affairs here from that perspective. And well, how would you measure it then?
You're killing me with the back. I gotta have metrics.
So how would you measure it?
Well, I would measure it. So I definitely think that's an easy first win. Let's call that a net promoter score.
Yeah, like a net promoter.
Right. But we need to have discipline for it, because if we don't have some metrics on that, then it's just, we don't want to be at the whim of anybody's opinion. For me, if you've done a good enough job on your setup part, right, your discovery work, you're going to know how much time sales managers are wasted or how much time is spent. So if I can give you, if only 10 hours a week our sales managers are able to invest in coaching for frontline sales managers or for salespeople, and I can get it to 20 hours, well, that's great. Then what I want to do is I want to track by each sales manager how much time how much uplift time that they've got, and whether or not there's an uptick in performance. Because I want to do the correlation. My correlation isn't me and the direct reps, it's my ability to amplify sales managers for their sales performance. If you go and understand the data, it's an easy metric to pull out. If you are intimidated by the data, it's going to be difficult for it.
Yeah. If you have clarity, I agree that you can do that.
And that's the thing. That's why it's really important that you start with clarity. Because once you have clarity, then you can measure things. And when you measure things, it becomes a positive flywheel. Another thing is, if you are offering opt-in services, track the attendance of those opt-in services. That's a metric. Also track the performance of the people who are doing it, and also capture their quotes. There are so many ways that you can measure the impact of these things if you've done your work on the clarity part. If you don't, if you're sloppy there, it's going to be really hard to measure. And to Brian's point, you're creating Band-Aids for folks, and the opinion net promoter score will work, but guys, it's just not that difficult to do the variable, the variation of the job analysis, the time and motion study, and the prioritization gap. Those are not hard things to do, and they provide you the foundation to measure lots of valuable things to show your contribution. I think it's very, very, very short-sighted to skip those things because you think you want to move fast. It's actually going to prevent your opportunity for adding more value to your company moving forward.
Yep. Thanks, Scott. And I think that's a great way to wrap it up. We're at time, and that's great words to take forward, with this idea of measurement. And that framework you just outlined can be used for a lot of different things. So as always, everybody, thanks so much for your time. Send us a note at engage@insidese.com. Also, subscribe to our podcast using any of your podcast players, and tell a friend, tell a colleague about us. We only grow through word of mouth, so we appreciate you sharing this with others and building the community with us. And we look forward to your ideas and your thoughts as we continue Inside Sales Enablement. Thanks so much, everybody.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us. To become an insider and amplify your journey, make sure you've subscribed to our show. If you have an idea for what Scott and Brian can cover in a future podcast, or have a story to share, please email them at engage@insidese.com. You can also connect with them online by going to insidese.com, following them on Twitter, or sending them a LinkedIn request.